When The Exorcist came out in 1973, it rattled the world. There were so many things happening in the movie that people hadn't seen on screen before. A young girl was cursing, spewing pea soup, urinating on the floor, and other horrific things that were too much for people to handle. Commercials and trailers for the movie were filled with people running out of the theater. People were vomiting, they were having seizures, and even dying. Yes, there are 9 deaths tied to this movie, according to legend. But did you know The Exorcist was inspired by actual events? It's true. Well, maybe, sort of. Hello, spooky crew, and thanks for coming back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. And thanks for coming to my spooky corner of the internet. My name is Alex Matsuo, and I am a paranormal investigator and researcher. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and click on that notification bell so that you'll be the first to know whenever I upload a new video. And you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter at The Spooky Stuff. And for more spooky stories and other ghost hunting resources, be sure to visit thespookystuff.com. Alright, let's get started. Before it was a movie, The Exorcist was a book that came out in 1971, and it was written by William Peter Blatty. So the inspiration for this book came about 2 decades prior. Blatty was a student at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and this was in 1949, and the Washington Post had published an article about an exorcism of a 14-year-old boy. Isn't this a girl? So this newspaper clipping about the 14-year-old boy would inspire him to write his famous book. So this boy was from the nearby town of Mount Rainier, Maryland. And according to Blatty, this case gave him the idea and nothing more. So after its publication, The Exorcist was on the New York Times best-selling list for 57 weeks. That's over a year. And 17 of those weeks were at the #1 spot. So with success like that, it's guaranteed to become a movie. And in case you're wondering, yes, I have read this book several times. So we know The Exorcist was inspired by a true story about a 14-year-old boy. Let's learn about this 14-year-old boy. So his name was simply known as Roland Doe. And if you dig around the internet a bit, you might see that he was from a family with the last name of Hunkler. So his name may have been Roland Hunkler. He was also known as Robbie Mannheim, as well as R. Apparently he was a fairly quiet kid growing up. He wasn't very athletic, he wasn't popular, but he was very studious. And this was according to his childhood friend, Dr. Alan KAGEY. Now, KAGEY did also indicate that Roland's mother and grandmother were very overbearing, and his father was distant, if not completely absent. What I'm saying is Roland's family was unremarkable, they were typical, they had nothing to hide. But then, Roland's Aunt Tilly came and visited. Now, apparently Tilly was a spiritualist, and she had an interest in the afterlife and what happens after we die, as most spiritualists do. Aunt Tilly had a particular interest in the Ouija board and taught Roland how to use one in 1948. Now, I have my own opinions about the Ouija board. You can check them out in my videos. In this case, using the Ouija board was not a good thing. It was from there the trouble started. Now, maybe Aunt Tilly didn't know how to use a Ouija board, or Roland learned how to use one and then went off on his own. I don't know. What we know is after Roland learned how to use the Ouija board from Aunt Tilly, his family started noticing some strange things happening in their home. In some instances, I have to say, Aunt Tilly was also known as Aunt Harriet. Gotta love the internet. The strange things happening in the Hunkler home, they were hearing muffled voices, objects were moving without anyone touching them, and there were sounds of footsteps that sounded like there were groups of people walking through the house. So we're talking about something potentially powerful. So going back to Dr. KAGEY, Alvin KAGEY, Roland's classmate, he was a kid at the time, obviously, and he said that one day while he was at Roland's house, the chair that Roland was sitting in started to shake, and then it threw Roland across the room. And Roland also started hearing scratching sounds coming from the floors and coming from the walls of his room. And another weird thing that happened was water was also dripping from the pipes and the walls. I mean, maybe they needed to check their plumbing, I don't know. At this point, the family was certain that the Ouija board that was used by Roland and Aunt Tilly, or Aunt Harriet, unlocked something evil. After the family confronted Aunt Tilly, she mysteriously passed away, which is weird. So it's evident too that Roland was very close with his Aunt Tilly and he took her death really hard. After she passed away, Roland became withdrawn and he started acting erratically. He would randomly scream and shout without provocation, and not long after, welts, scratches, and bruises started showing up on his body. So Roland's family was desperate for answers, so they took him to several doctors and psychiatrists in an effort to find out what was wrong. But no answers could be found. His family eventually consulted the Catholic Church, even though they themselves were Protestants, and Roland was examined by two priests, Father Bober and Father Hughes. So during their examination, the two priests noted that Roland would not take his eyes off of their Bibles. And according to these priests, this was a sign of possession. Now, when asked for his name, Roland responded, "Ego legionibus," which means I am legions in Latin. Please forgive my terrible Latin. So Father Hughes recommended that Roland be moved to a Jesuit hospital near Washington, D.C. Around this time, Roland's outbursts only continued to get worse. And they got worse to the point where Roland had to be restrained in his bed. Father Hughes then attempted an exorcism on Roland, which lasted for 3 nights. And then Roland managed to break through his restraints. And when this happened, he managed to cut Father Hughes's arm from his wrist to the inside of his elbow with a mattress spring. So after this injury, Father Hughes was done. He's like, nope, I'm out. And I can't say I blame him. He was convinced that Roland now belonged to evil at this point. So Roland's family took him back home and they were hoping that maybe they could find another way to treat him. However, nothing improved. And then later, Roland's mother was shocked to find the word Louis or Louis branded on his skin. She took this as a sign to move, so Roland and his family relocated to St. Louis, Missouri, hoping for a new start. The demon wants us to move, honey. We should probably go. But this relocation did not work. Big surprise, the demon told you to move and you move to where they want to go. I don't know. So the family tried to consult doctors and folks in the medical field once more, but they were out of options. Also, we're talking into the 1940s. The family was also really freaked out about being social outcasts too. So once again, they turned back to the Catholic Church. They went to the local Catholic Church and there Roland was examined by Father Bodern and Father Bishop. So they came to the conclusion that Roland was in the state of possession. So they got the clearance, they proceeded to try an exorcism. And Father Bodern wasn't feeling confident with his abilities to drive out the demon. So if you are familiar with demonology and exorcism, lack of confidence and feeling vulnerable is a big red flag, like you shouldn't move forward with it. So Father Bodern enlisted the help of Father Halloran and Father Bishop. They mainly assisted with subduing Roland, so restraining him, while Bodern went through the rite of exorcism. And for exorcisms, this is fairly normal. You have the exorcist, you have a priest that's an assistant, and then you have 1 or 2 people helping with restraining and all that good stuff. So according to one of the priests, Roland had the strength of a full-grown man. So we're talking 14-year-old boy who wasn't athletic. Yeah, that seems pretty incredible. So during the exorcism, Roland was cursing, he was threatening the priests with violence, and he was propositioning them for favors. And he also spat on them. And this exorcism lasted for 3 weeks. And during this time, Father Bodern kept journals about the incidents with Roland. These journals are in a book. It was published in 1991, and the book is called Possessed, The True Story of an Exorcism by Thomas B. Allen. And Father Bishop also kept a diary too. However, Father Bishop's diary was burned by Father Halloran. It's like, what? Anyway, on Father Bodern's recommendation, Roland went back to the hospital. And this time the hospital was the Alexian Brother Hospital in South St. Louis. So this is where the story gets a bit more messed up. Roland goes through a 3-week exorcism, which was probably excruciating, and then he's sent back to the hospital, but this time Roland was kept in solitary confinement. And it's not certain whether or not his family knew this. Exorcisms, solitary confinement, who knew what this was doing to Roland's psyche? Father Bodern finally decided to try to baptize Roland in hopes of strengthening his connection to the church. After much resisting, big surprise, Roland was baptized. He even accepted communion water. But then something weird happened. Roland started acting as if he was the archangel Michael. Roland was saying, "Satan, I am Michael, and I command you to leave this boy now." After that, apparently Roland's soul was freed. He was cured. Roland managed to live the rest of his life in peace and quiet and stayed pretty much anonymous. And according to the priests, Roland never remembered what happened to him. So Roland managed to live the rest of his life out of the spotlight, even after The Exorcist the book came out and even after the movie came out. Now, what happened to everyone else after the exorcism? Here's where it gets weird. According to a few sources, many of the priests that were involved with the case passed away from mysterious circumstances. So, Father Halloran seemed to be one of the most outspoken people from the case. Thomas B. Allen, the author of Possessed, heavily interviewed Father Halloran. And Father Halloran also confirmed that there were multiple weird events that happened during Roland's exorcism. The objects moving by themselves and his bed trembling, kind of like what happened with the movie. And he also confirmed that there were words forming on the boy's skin, just like what happened to Regan in The Exorcist. But Father Halloran said that he couldn't make out the words specifically. Yeah, Father Halloran had a lot to say about the comparisons between the book and the movie, The Exorcist, and Roland's case. And we're never going to know what truly happened to Roland, as there are so many different versions of this story. And of course, the skeptics are going to say that this was actually a case of mental illness and not demonic possession, which is possible too. This next part I found really fascinating. So according to legend, Roland's original hospital room at Alexian Brother Hospital was sealed up, and apparently some weird things were happening in that room. The home where the Hunklers were living when they were in St. Louis, Missouri is also now a popular tourist spot. So you can visit the home where the original real Exorcist event happened. Now, I do need to say that there were some inconsistencies with the story as I was researching. So some of the newspaper articles had Roland's age as 12 or even 13 years old, and other sources said he lived in Cottage City, Maryland, or he lived in Mount Rainier, Maryland. There's some differences there. But the final exorcism supposedly happened in Maryland, while others say it happened in St. Louis. So it's honestly more evident that it happened in Missouri. And also there are some other cases that say that Roland didn't start using the Ouija board until his aunt died and he was trying to contact her. So as you can see, there are multiple variations of the story, so it's up to you to determine whether or not you believe it. And in cases of possession, they are exceptionally rare. In my experience, folks who are seeking an exorcism actually need mental help, meaning they need a doctor, not a priest. And there's a reason why the Catholic Church has a rigorous process to get an exorcism that includes a full medical workup to rule out any and all explanations. What do you think of the story? Do you think Roland was really possessed? Let me know in the comments. And before you go, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and click on that notification bell. And feel free to share this video with your friends and family who also enjoy the spooky stuff. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next round.